So when I was a kid, I had gynecomastia, which is like male breasts, and it was really bad. I really hated it. It was really embarrassing and terrible. And luckily, I was able to get surgery on the NHS. So I guess when I was like 15 or 16, I had surgery and had them removed. And it was good. It was really good. Like, it was really just, a really good and important thing, because I was able to kind of move on from something that caused me a lot of embarrassment and discomfort. And then cut to, I guess, 4 years later, maybe 3 or 4 years later, I don't know. And I had, I guess, started to gain a bit of weight again as an adult, and I started to become insecure and convinced that this was coming back, that I had gynecomastia again. Part of this stemmed from the fact that there's 2 types of gynecomastia surgery. One involves actually making an incision around the underside of the nipple and taking out all the tissue that's behind there, and the other one involves putting a small liposuction thing through the side of your chest and squirting a very powerful jet of liquid which breaks down tissue, and at the same time a tube sucks it out, and it leaves very minimal scarring. I mean, I have like a dot on each side of me. You wouldn't even see it, so it's pretty amazing. Whereas the other form of surgery is more kind of brutal and like tends to leave scars. I'm sure it's come on a bit now since then, because this was a long time ago. This was like, I guess almost 15 years ago. Yeah, so I had the less intrusive type of surgery, and I was always convinced like they haven't fully gotten everything out, because they haven't kind of gone in there and done this, and this is more like kind of it's kind of 80% complete. They haven't really done it. In reality, it was more than enough. It was completely fine. But I'd become fixated on this idea of like having having a completely flat chest, which actually in itself is like, it's not necessary. You know what I mean? You don't need to have a completely flat chest. Some people do, some men do, but like, there's quite a lot of variation in terms of what is normal and healthy. But I was sort of just a bit, So anyway, then a few years later, I started to think it had come back, or I still had it, and so I went to a doctor, because I'd heard before my surgery, that they were considering using tamoxifen, which is a breast cancer drug. It's as far as I know, it's a hormonal drug. It attacks breast tissue. Some bodybuilders use it to deal with gyno from taking steroids. It's not healthy to take it. It's used as a cancer therapy. It's not something that normal people should just be taking. It's like a very serious thing, and I think for that reason it's never caught on as a gynecomastia therapy. It can be a preventative measure for people using roids who are, cranking their estrogen levels up unknowingly, or not unknowingly, but unintentionally. But for a normal person, or someone with, who's got gynecomastia already, it's not suitable, and it doesn't really do much to reverse gynecomastia as far as I'm aware. I think it stops breast tissue from like developing, so it's useful in cancer patients and stuff, and as a very over the top and extreme preventative measure, I guess. So anyway, I'd heard about this, and at the time I wanted it. I thought, oh, that sounds good. Now I would never dream of putting something like that in my body, but at the time I didn't really think like that. And I was very like singular, like I just want this problem gone and I don't care what happens. So I went to the doctor years later to say, like, I think I still have gynecomastia and I want to go on tamoxifen, and he was like, right, we don't really give people tamoxifen for that. I don't even know what you're talking about, and you don't have a gynecomastia. If you lost a bit of weight, like this would go away. You're just carrying a tiny bit of fat there, which is what it was. It was just a tiny bit of fat, basically. Like, it was nothing. And I wasn't hugely overweight. I was a little bit overweight, so it wasn't even significant, you know. It was completely normal. But I wasn't happy with his answer. So I went online and I found this Indian pharmacy, and they still call me all the time. It's 15 years ago, and I get probably 5 spam emails from them a day, and they ring me like probably twice a year. They call it Canadian pharmacy. They can't even spell pharmacy. They keep spelling it pharmacy, and they keep ringing me. They're like the most dodgy pharmacy ever. Like, God knows what they put in their fucking... probably the drugs are legit, actually, but like, you know, yeah, I mean, the Indian pharmacy is crazy. You can buy like ketamine and like tramadol and stuff from these places. They're crazy, and like really cheap. Like I think benzos and stuff out there in India, they're like, it's like a tenth of a penny for like one or something, or for a whole strip. They're crazy cheap. Anyway, so I ordered some tamoxifen, and I went to pick it up from the sorting office when it arrived, and I went to Tesco, Tesco Express. For Americans, that's like a small shop, convenience shop, food shop, whatever, a mini supermarket, a petrol station supermarket. And I went in there, and I had it, and I put it in my basket while I was shopping. You know, I put my package that had the tamoxifen in my basket, and I did my shopping, and then at some point I just lost it. I don't know, as in I lost the package, not my cool, not my temper. Just flipped out in Tesco for no reason. No, I lost the package, and I couldn't find it, and I don't remember if it was like I had put it in I put my basket down and someone picked it up, or I'd put it on a shelf. You know, I remember I was looking on the shelves thinking maybe I put it down while I was browsing. Maybe someone took it, maybe whatever, I don't know. I looked everywhere. I looked literally all over the shop. I looked under the shelves, I was looking on top of the shelves, I was asking the people to help me. None of us could find it, so probably someone nicked it, or it just ended up somewhere really odd. But had that happened, it did have my name and address on it, and I lived locally, so someone might have like popped it through the letterbox or whatever, you know. So, because I lived like a minute away from there. So God knows, yeah, someone probably took it, which, you know, I doubt they had a blast with my tamoxifen, to be honest. Good for them, but yeah, I don't think they would have gotten much of a buzz from that, and I don't think it had much resale value unless you really were in the right circles, but you never know. Maybe some lucky bodybuilder found it. Yeah, I was going to start taking it that day, you know, because I had this mindset of like a very, 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 very impulsive and singular, and just like, I have to just do this, and I don't care what anyone says. I didn't tell anyone I was doing it, but I was like, I don't care, like, I'm just doing this. I want this problem gone. It's not right. It has to go. I have to deal with this. It's really stupid, basically. And God knows what effect that would have had on my body and my hormones long term. It's not a healthy substance to just be taking, and who knows if it even was what it was advertised as. And I was not sensible about looking into how to take it or how much one should take. I literally just ordered it and was like, I'm just going to take a pill a day. I'm not even going to, whatever. I didn't know anything about it. I just decided I was just going to randomly start taking heavy prescription cancer drugs for a non-existent problem. And it was so odd that it disappeared, really. I mean, you know, I've never had that happen to a package before. It's never happened since. It was very strange. And at the time I didn't think much of it, but I kept looking back years later and thinking, that was really weird. It was really weird. It just disappeared into thin air. And at the time I thought it was a really bad thing. I thought, like, this is so far, you know, I'm just trying to sort myself out, you know, I can't live my life like this, you know, I'm a freak, and I was just trying to, you know, I'm just trying to do something, and I can't even do this, you know. And it was expensive, so I didn't order it again. and I just felt like I'd been really hard done by, It took ages to arrive. So anyway, I ended up just kind of moving on and forgetting about it. And now I look at that as a perfect example of a blessing in disguise, really. Because that's what it was. Yeah, it was a really, really good thing that happened. And a lot of similar things have happened over the years. So quite a few years later, I had sciatica, which is like a lower back problem. It can be very debilitating and unpleasant, and it was for me. It was really difficult. It made my life very difficult. And I went to a doctor in Bristol, and I told him about it, and I said it's making it very difficult to work. And it was making it really was. I was a gardener. It was very difficult to work. And he immediately, kind of pricked up a bit and was like, what he said to me, he looked at me really suspiciously, and he said, what exactly are you trying to get out of this? And I was like, fuck it now. I was like, just medical help, like a doctor to help me with my problem that I've been dealing with for a long time that really hurts and is making my life difficult. But anyway, obviously he thought I was a benefits grounger and I wanted to be put on disability, and I wanted drugs maybe, because it was probably in my record that I'd done a lot of drugs. And I wouldn't have said no to any of those things, but I really did also just want to deal with the problem first and foremost. So he obviously didn't take kindly to me, and he was supposed to put me through for a referral to this specialist clinic, and he said he did, and he said it will take about 6 months. And I think about 9 months later, I was like, I haven't heard anything. I haven't even had a letter telling me, it's been so long. I know the waiting lists are long, but this is crazy. So I called up, and they were like, yeah, no referral has been put through. No one put one through. And I was fuming. If this was a private company, I would have done something, and probably could have, I guess maybe could have sued the NHS. Obviously I had no interest in doing that. But it was really out of order. I spent months dealing with a really, really serious, unpleasant problem, because this guy basically thought I was a bum, and he didn't bother to put my referral through. I don't know what happened. Anyway, it was ridiculous. And when that happens, they can't put you forward on the waiting list. They just said nothing we can do. There's no, you don't you don't get anything back. You don't fucking, whatever. They're just like, okay, that's it. I'm not saying I'd given anything in the first place. I certainly wasn't paying a lot of taxes, but as in, from a private company, you might get your money back or something. But when the NHS do something wrong, it's just sort of that's that. Just take it or leave it, really. So they put my referral through again, and I started from the beginning, and I was put onto the waiting list, and it took a really long time. And even once I got there, I had to go for an appointment and then get given another appointment. And during that time, I started to lose weight and work on my core strength a bit more, and by the time I got to that appointment, it was a bit better. It was starting to get better, and I considered surgery. They offered surgery, and the surgery is pretty severe for sciatica. It's very severe, and it's a spinal surgery. It's very intense. It's quite dangerous as far as surgeries go, and it's really a last resort, and it also doesn't necessarily fix the problem at all. You quite often need surgery again. But again, I was like, no, I have to fix this. If the surgery is necessary, I'm going to have the surgery. But by the time this appointment came round, the problem had lessened, so I was a bit more hesitant, and I was like, okay, and I was considering the surgery, and I said to the lady, I'm going to give it 1 month, and if it hasn't improved more than it already has, then I'll have the surgery. Luckily, it kept getting better. It actually, I did have it for years after that, but it would come and go. But it got better enough that I didn't need or want the surgery anymore. So again, I was really pissed off that this referral didn't get put through, and I felt it was really unfair, and I was being left to deal with this problem that was making my life really difficult, and I felt like cheated, and understandably so, you know, like, because I was thinking, what am I supposed to do? The doctors aren't helping me, I can't do anything. And you know, yeah, it was harsh at the time, but now again, I'm so happy. I look back and I think, wow, like, you know, imagine had I had that surgery, who knows what would have happened. And it could have been a really debilitating surgery, and I'd have scars, and it could have gone wrong, and it would have taken so much time out of my life. And it just, you know, I'm really glad I didn't have surgery that really, like, young people should not be having unless absolutely necessary. Now I have zero sciatica, it's completely gone. I've never had any surgery or really any treatment, just dealt with it. And I'm so glad. And when I was a kid, I used to, I would say I used to, I still do. I have extremely small hands. You can't hear it. It's here is next to my face. You can see I have tiny hands, really tiny hands. Like, there's the size literally of a child's hands. It's crazy. I don't know if that scale is helping you to sort of perceive how small my hands are. You'd have to see them in real life. They're fucking tiny. And they were tiny when I was a kid. They weren't even much tinier, but they were still tiny then. And I really wanted to play guitar, and it was genuinely it was difficult to play the guitar. And I know, like, you know, I was very much in the mind of, like, making a lot of excuses to things back then. And I was like, oh, I can't do it because of my tiny hands. But legitimately, to be fair, there were a huge number of chords I could not make, songs I could not play. And of course, someone who had a lot of perseverance, they would just continue and learn and figure out a way that they can do it, or, you know, go through the embarrassment of using a 3/4 sized guitar. Which I was not willing to do. But it really, I mean, really, it was difficult to play the guitar. And still kind of is, to be honest. There's a lot of chords I can't make. And at the time I thought, man, this is so fucked up. All I want to do is play the guitar, you know, because I was, like, very musical, and I really loved music. And I thought, like, I just want to be in a band. I just want to, like, sing and play guitar and do all of this. And I kind of abandoned that dream. I think a lot of the reason I abandoned it was because I didn't have the work ethic anyway to persevere with learning. I didn't have the discipline. I was just like, this should be easy instantly, and if it's not, there's something wrong. And I didn't want to, like, I had a friend who started at the same time, and he was really good. He was we were like 11 or 12. He was, like, really mature, and he went about it really diligently, and he got really good, and was like, he was the opposite. He had very long fingers. He was a tall guy. Yeah, and he did really well, and I just didn't have that attitude either. And so then when I got older than that, you know, as a teenager, like, a lot of my friends were, like, bands and stuff, and I couldn't, like, play any music, you know. And at the time I always thought, oh, that's fucked up, man, you know, this is all I ever wanted to do, and something that I would have been good at, you know. And that led me to other types of music, and now again I think I never would have learned, or I might not have needed to or wanted to or had the time or space to learn to do the things that I do now musically, which don't involve guitars. It mostly involves, like, samples and computers and stuff, and I think that's much better suited to me. And again, I think it's like a huge blessing in disguise, this thing I thought I was, like, robbed of, that I always wanted to do. I'm really glad that I was never able to. I'm really glad I was never able to really, like, learn the guitar and just be another person playing the guitar, you know. And you never know how these things will work out, things that seem bad, you know, you never know. And so then when I was in my 20s, and like my early 20s, and I was trying to make it, like, as a rapper and a musician, I felt and still feel that I was really good, and that I was deserving of, I mean, I thought I was, like, I still do, to be honest. But at the time, I was much more. I thought about it a lot more. You know, I was like, I'm like the most talented. I'm the most talented writer in the world. I'm a fucking genius. I'm fucking, this is crazy. I'm gonna blow up instantly. You know, I'm gonna be so successful and shit. And it didn't happen in the way I envisioned it. And at the time, I thought like, I'm gonna get successful at music. I'm gonna like shag a lot of women, and I'm gonna just basically kill myself with drugs. Like, that was pretty much my. Oh, is that a wasp? Get that wasp away from Luna. Sorry. So I was gonna just basically self-destruct. That was kind of my plan. I thought like, I'm gonna just like shag multiple women every day, ruin my life, kill myself with cocaine, and like sort of just burn out quickly, but be like, you know, famous and successful. And I wouldn't say I was even excited for this in a way. Like, I felt I was entitled to it. I felt it was my birthright. I also had a sense of impending doom. I thought as soon as I get well known, everything's going to be terrible, and my life is going to be ruined, but it still should happen, and it's kind of what I want to happen, even though I'm afraid of it. And so I always felt cheated, I always felt wronged, and I felt there were like political reasons that got in the way of my success. And there were, to be fair. I mean, there were like, as the years went on, ideological kind of socio-political things at quite a few key moments kind of prevented me from taking the next steps into success and from being embraced by the scene at large, which is quite uniform ideologically, politically, and I was basically informed as such, yeah, not going to name any names, Pitchfork, yeah, anyway, so for years I felt this way. For most of my, you know, first half of my 20s or whatever, I was like, man, this is fucked up, like I deserve recognition. And even a few years ago I was like, this is crazy. And then recently I looked at it and thought, yeah, if I had gotten successful at 20, I am sure I would be dead. And I know people say that a lot, you know, if this hadn't happened I would be dead, and it's easy to say. Maybe I wouldn't, you know, maybe I would have made it through that fucking head fuck somehow, but really I think my relationships would have been destroyed. I would have done so many bad things. I would have fucked up so many things. My health would be in a state. I would be an addict. I never would have learned what it's like to be a normal person. I never would have had all the personal growth I've had and the normal life experiences, and I never would have made music that reflected a normal life, because it's one of my kind of problems with a lot of artists I listen to. You know, their music becomes totally unrelatable after a while, and a lot of great artists, I mean, if you look at like Van Gogh, all his stuff was made when he was a nobody. Like, he was just like, you know, some fucking guy in a house painting, and he was painting normal things around him that he saw, and who knows how it would have affected his work if he had been successful earlier on, or not earlier, while he was alive. So I'm so grateful now, more than anything, of any of these things. I'm so grateful that I didn't get the things I wanted when I was 20, because they would have been terrible, and the type of girls I liked and stuff, man, and just like, would have been a nightmare. I mean, just a nightmare. Like, I don't know how, but I think, yeah, if things had gone the way I wanted them to, it would have been so bad, I think. And I'm so glad it didn't. And now it's gotten to a point, you know, I'm like 30, and I'm like, yeah, I would like to, you know, like make some money and achieve the recognition my work deserves, but I have a bit of doubt there, because I'm like, who knows, maybe when I'm 35 I'll look back and be like, thank God I didn't achieve the success I wanted when I was 30, because I've had this experience so many times. Every year I look back a few years and I think, oh man, thank God that version of me didn't get what he wanted. And so who knows, you know, maybe when I'm 40, you know, I'll be like, Jesus, thank God it never happened for me, you know. You don't know how things are going to turn out, and you don't know how things could turn out in a positive way that seem bad at the time. You learn so much over time, you know. So I'm so glad it never worked out, and I look at things like this beautiful doggy I'm here with now, and I think of all the things, all the bad things that, even if you just take it down to, like, you know, the butterfly effect or whatever, chaos theory or whatever it's called. I don't know if the butterfly effect is just what they call it in that stupid Ashton Kutcher movie that I used to enjoy as a child, or if that is in fact the official name. But yeah, like, I wouldn't have met her. I wouldn't have taken her on to, you know, I was just meant to look after her for a few days over Christmas, and I think of how close I came to not seeing the Facebook post, and how close it all was to not happening, and I love her so much. Like, I don't know, I can't even describe how much I love her, you know, and all of the bad things, to me, all of the bad things that happened to me over the years, not the ones I've talked about, just in general, I'm glad they happened, basically. And coming round to seeing it that way leaves you much more open-minded about the things that do happen, and they give you more kind of faith in events around you. Or it gives you more faith in kind of the events that happen in your life, you know, like you're able to think like, okay, I'm not thrilled about this thing that's happening right now, but I wouldn't say I always think, oh, there's a reason for it, but I just think maybe there is, you know, maybe it's part of a plan or destiny. But regardless, I don't know what result it will have in the long term anyway. This could be a really good thing, or the alternative to this could have been much, much worse. So it helps. It helps you to put things, I wouldn't say even into perspective, but to compartmentalize things in a way that maybe stops you from overreacting in the present. What are you doing? She's bored as fuck. She can't understand why I'm making her just stand on this wall. I just don't want her running off and like eating things.